Hey everyone, it's Tobes and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the next video in my series of March of the Machine Commander deck techs. I'm covering every legendary creature from the March of the Machine main set in no particular order, plus the extra legends from Mom Jumpstart, the special pre-release promos, and if there's interest, maybe even the non-face legends from the Mom Commander product. So if you have a request for a Mom Commander you'd like to see me build or a way you want to see me build them, let me know in the comments below. As you see, today our commander is Vorinclex, the final Phyrexian Praetor. This 12-foot tall predator loves a world in which only the strong survive, so it's painfully obvious that Vorinclex is the green-aligned Praetor. He's easy to manipulate and not really concerned with maintaining his rule over his sphere beyond notionally being the biggest of beasts. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Who hasn't wanted to slam down the biggest creature on the battlefield and just trust that now that it's here, everything will work out for us? I'm excited to talk about what I cooked up, but before I get into the deck tech, let me go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why they're cool, even if they are pretty straightforward. And so whatever they want me to do, I put 30 cards toward that. It's my game plan. It's what we try to do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward these three categories of support for that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction. I usually run one or two sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes not at all, but I almost always keep to my floor of 38 lands so I can make sure I hit my land drops and I can play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Vorinclex, no epithet, is a 6/6 legendary Phyrexian Praetor for 3 and double green. Vorinclex has trample and reach. When Vorinclex enters, we search our library for up to 2 forests, reveal them, put in our hand, and shuffle. And we can transform Vorinclex at sorcery speed for 6 and double green. We transform him by exiling him and having him come back to the battlefield on this side as a saga, the Grand Evolution. The Grand Evolution's first chapter, which of course will trigger when it enters, is we mill 10 cards, then we put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. Next turn, start of our first main phase, we will distribute 7 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures we control, and then on the third chapter, it says, until end of turn, creatures you control pay 1 generic mana, and this creature fights target creature you don't control. As part of that same ability, we also exile this saga and return it to the battlefield, which means it'll come back face up, which means it enters as Vorinclex, and we'll search for 2 more forests and put them in our hand and shuffle. So this will not give Vorinclex this ability, because when this part triggers, this card is face up as an enchantment, not a creature. But all of our other creatures will be able to fight creatures we don't control as long as they continue to live and we continue to have mana to pay into their ability. So, I want to tell you all a little story. Way back in 2021, the Kaldheim set dropped. This was our first full look at the Norse mythology-inspired world, and it was awesome. The vibes were perfect between the art and the story, the 10 realms and the gods who could die, mechanics like Boast and Foretell, the MDFCs, the awesome sagas. Heck, I started playing Magic in Ice Age, so I was excited just seeing more snow-covered lands. I had a blast playing Kaldheim when it first came out, but there was one part of it that didn't, to me, quite fit. This guy. According to the lore, Vorinclex was the first Praetor to use the planar bridge technology that Tezzeret brought to Phyrexia as a way of planeswalking without a spark. The problem of the planar bridge being unable to transport organic matter was solved, I guess, by the fact that Phyrexians are part machine, and the glistening oil in them is kind of like a virus. It's not really alive. Jumping through the bridge essentially killed Vorinclex by destroying all his organic parts. But when a Kaldheim stag came too close to the steaming metal and bone he'd left behind, he was able to rebuild his body. Gross. So this kicked off a lot of speculation. The War of the Spark was the last big event in the Magic fiction, and Nicol Bolas was imprisoned, so fans were left wondering who the next villain would be. The appearance of Vorinclex told us it would be the Phyrexians, but it wasn't clear how or what form that could possibly take. Not until the final parts of the web fiction did we learn that Vorinclex was on Kaldheim to steal Tyrite, a magical substance derived from the sap of the World Tree. Vorinclex killed, or nearly killed, my girl Asika, god of the tree, in the process, and if you've seen my pack opening videos, you know I still hold a grudge. But why does all this matter? Vorinclex was most likely killed during the Phyrexian invasion, decapitated as he fought against the Zhalfirin cavalry. Sure, he might be able to regenerate again, but with New Phyrexia itself cut off from the multiverse, what could he possibly do? the same thing he's always done. Fight, hunt, kill, feast on his prey, and do it all over again. He growls and roars and struts to show he's the scariest monster, and he rejects sentience in favor of brutality and instinct, because I guess that makes him scarier. He is a by-the-numbers villain of dullest green, a predictable pile of tired tropes wrapped in cords of flexing muscle and gnashing teeth, a reduction of a simplification of a superficial read on what makes Timmies and Tammies enjoy the game. He is a blunt instrument that, nevertheless, gets the job done. That's the catch, of course. Vorinclex's appearance in Call Time, the foul way he appeared on the plane, the monstrous things he did there, all of that. His role in the story is more interesting than he is himself, and yet when you play him, there's nothing to scoff at. Ramping out big creatures, making them bigger still, and turning them sideways while you play out even more creatures isn't just a workable strategy in Commander, it's fun. That's the essence of Green's appeal. It can be nuanced and complex, but it doesn't have to be. It scratches that itch that most of us had when we first started playing the game, and many of us still retain because it's a good time. Sending a huge horde of creatures barreling towards our opponents is a blast, and Vorinclex only makes it better. Free forests when he enters? Sounds great. Free creatures when we transform him? Awesome. Counters on all of our menagerie the next turn? Absolutely. And for a pittance, all of our creatures can fight whatever we want them to, while Vorinclex flips back over and draws us a couple more forests to keep the party going. Yeah, this is what I'm here for. Like all of our creatures, like our commander, our deck is big and dumb, and that's all it has to be. We tap lands for creatures, and we tap creatures for damage, until it's time to shuffle back up and do it all over again. A shallow strategy doesn't stop us from digging deep, and being reductive can make anything seem boring. No need for fancy dressing on this green salad. We like the taste of victory just fine. You'll enjoy this deck if you like making big plays that just snowball into bigger ones until the avalanche buries your opponents, or if you just want to get in touch with your inner Timmy or Tammy and grin as you say, go to combat. So as usual, this Moxfield page that we're going to be going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section that gives you a big list of cards that I considered putting into this deck and ultimately decided not to, but that doesn't mean that they're not perfect for you. They should be a great place to get some inspiration to build your own Vorinclex deck, especially if you have a different budget than what I tried to shoot for here. So check that out if you like. We're going to start off with a section that I call big ones. These are just big, dumb idiots that either have power of 5 or mana value of 5, because that's Vorinclex. He's a 5 mana creature, even though Vorinclex himself is a 6/6, a 5 mana creature like Wayward Swordtooth is pretty big. So I want to be able to get out my big things in this deck, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start talking about Wayward Swordtooth. This is 2 and a green for a 5/5 dinosaur with Ascend. Ascend means if we have a permanent with Ascend in play, the moment we control 10 or more permanents, we suddenly get the City's Blessing, and we'll have it for the rest of the game, even if we don't control that Ascend permanent any further, or if we lose our permanents and we no longer control 10. As long as at the moment we control both an Ascend permanent and 10 or more permanents, as long as both of those conditions are met, we suddenly have the City's Blessing, and we'll have it for the rest of the game no matter what. The City's Blessing doesn't do anything, except that permanents with Ascend also have a different additional rule that cares about it. For example, Wayward Swordtooth says this creature can't attack or block unless you have the City's Blessing. So we could get our dinosaur out pretty early and just sort of wait. We can't really do anything with it. With this 5/5, we can't attack or block with it until we have that City's Blessing. Although, the third chapter on the Grand Evolution does let us pay mana into the Wayward Swordtooth and have it fight, even when we don't have the City's Blessing. So it can't attack or block, but it could still fight. What is nice, however, is that it has this other line of text as well. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. So this is a ramp card until it becomes a threat. That seems pretty good to me. We have a lot of ramp in this deck, and another piece of it is Defiler of Vigor. 3 and double green for a 6/6 trampling Phyrexian worm. So if not for the reach, this is the same cost, power and toughness, and keyword abilities as Vorinclex. Defiler of Vigor also has this ability, which essentially means treat all your green permanent spells as though one of their green pips was a Phyrexian green pip. It says as an additional cost, you can pay 2 life and it will reduce that spell's cost by a single green. If you paid the life that way, it can only reduce the amount of green mana you pay, but it only lets you pay the life once, so it really just says treat all of your green permanent spells as though one of their green pips is a Phyrexian green pip. Pretty nice. It also says whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So all of our stuff gets bigger. We're not a counters focused deck. We do have some counter stuff going on, but it's nice to be able to see our stuff get bigger and bigger and bigger, supplemented of course by the second chapter of the Grand Evolution. And Defiler of Vigor helps us ramp our things out because we don't care about our life total, we just care about our opponent's life totals going down, as well as make our stuff bigger and bigger. Next we have Elder Gargaroth, just a menace during Standard for M21. 3 and double green gives us a 6/6 Vigilance, Reach, Trample. So same rate, same power, toughness, even more keywords than Vorinclex. And it says whenever the Gargaroth attacks or blocks, we get to either make a 3/3 Beast token, gain 3 life, or draw a card. So if we need extra monsters, we can get them. If we need more card draw, which we always do, we can get it. And heck, we might even want a little life. The Gargaroth is great. Next we have from Foundations, Elfsworn Giant. This is 3 and double green for a 5/3 giant with reach, and landfall, make a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So we've got a good landfall synergy in this deck. A little bit of a theme of it, just because we're always going to have lands, because we're running plenty of them, we have a lot of ramp, and Vorinclex draws us to forests every time he hits the battlefield. So Elfsworn Giant rewards us for that by giving us a wider board, in addition to having a nice reacher that we can block with. Emissary Green is from the Clue set, which I recently played the Clue box for the first time. If you can find it for an inexpensive price, it's fun. It's not just Jumpstart, it's a good time. In any case, Emissary Green is 4 and a green for a 3/3 legendary human advisor that has an attack trigger. Whenever Emissary Green attacks, starting with us, each player votes for profit or security. We make a number of treasures equal to twice the number of profit votes, and we put a number of 1/1 counters on each of our creatures equal to the number of security votes. So we get to decide, are we putting a counter on each of our creatures, or are we getting 2 treasures as a baseline? And then every other player decides, are we getting 2 more treasures, or are we getting another counter on each of our creatures? It is just gross. And even if Emissary Green only attacks once, and we have this happen one time, just the threat of it is delightful. Next we have Oher Kaslim from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. For 3 and double green, we get a 6/5 legendary god with trample that says when it deals combat damage to a player, we reveal that many cards off the top of our library. So the same number of cards as the amount of damage we did to the player. We can put a creature and or a land from among them onto the battlefield. So we can get, if we look at 2 cards, one's a creature and one's a land, we can put them both into play. And then we put the rest on the bottom in a random order. And when Oher Kaslim dies, we return it to the battlefield tapped and transformed as the Temple of Cultivation. So it will come in tapped as this land that will tap for green. And then as a sorcery, when we have essentially the city's blessing, we have to have the 10 or more permanents in play when this happens, so it's not the same as the city's blessing, but it's a nod to it. We can pay 2 and a green and tap it and transform it, and it will be Oher Kaslim again. Now this does not transform the way that Vorinclex does. Vorinclex exiles itself and returns to the battlefield transformed, which means it will come in untapped. Oher Kaslim, when it dies, comes back to the battlefield as the Temple of Cultivation, and it says it comes in tapped. In addition, we have to tap it when it's the temple in order to transform it, and since it doesn't exile itself, it will transform still tapped. So getting Oher Kaslim onto either side is going to mean it's going to be tapped. We can't use it again right away, but it's still very powerful. Next is Railway Brawler, a favorite card in my house. 3 and double green for a 5/5 Rhino Warrior with Trample and Reach that says whenever another creature you control enters, put X +1/+1 counters on it where X is its power. A lot of the times this is just doubling the power and toughness of the creature. It's at least doubling the power. And Railway Brawler has Plot for 3 and a green. Plot means at sorcery speed we can pay the plot cost, exile the brawler face up, and then at sorcery speed on a later turn, we can cast it for free. We don't have to pay its mana cost. So Railway Brawler, very nice for this. The plot ability is not an alternate casting cost. The without paying its mana cost is the alternate casting cost. So something like Defiler of Vigor is not going to help us plot the Railway Brawler or cast it later, because we can cast it without paying its mana cost later, and plot is an ability, not a casting cost. Just worth noting. Next we have Scion of Calamity, another dinosaur. 3 and double green for a 5/5 dino with Myriad. Myriad means when it attacks, for each opponent other than the defending player, we can make a token copy of the Scion of Calamity that's tapped and attacking another player, or a planeswalker they control, and at the end of combat, those tokens get exiled. So this is essentially, we can hit planeswalkers too, but when we attack with this thing, we're not just attacking one person, we're attacking every opponent. Everyone's got to deal with this 5/5 dino. That says, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, destroy target artifact or enchantment that player controls. So we get a free naturalize with our 5/5 dinos. That seems pretty good. Next is Silverback Elder, one of my favorites. For these decks that have green and have a lot of creatures, we want a Silverback Elder. This is a 5/7 Ape Shaman for 2 and triple green that says whenever we cast a creature spell, we just have to cast it, it doesn't even have to enter. We could either naturalize something, so destroy an artifact or enchantment. We can look at the top 5, find a land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and put the rest of the bottom in a random order. Or just gain 4 life. So if we're desperate for life, we can get that. But every time we cast a creature spell, we can naturalize something, or probably get some land out. It comes out tapped, but that's just free ramp for us. And even if we whiff on this, we're still sitting there with a 5/7 Silverback Elder, plus whatever creature we just cast. Lots of repeatable value. Next is Summon Titan from the Final Fantasy set. 3 and double green for a 7/7 enchantment creature Saga Giant. So this is a saga, but also a creature. The way that works is it will come in and will get its first chapter ability, and it will have Summoning Sickness. The next turn, we'll get its second chapter ability, and it doesn't have Summoning Sickness, so we can attack with it if we want. On the third turn, we'll get its third chapter ability, and then it will sacrifice itself. So we only get to attack with this on the turn after it came in. But it's a reach trample. So if we do attack with it, we're trampling as a 7/7, and either of those other turns, if we're blocking with it, it has reach. Plus, it has the following abilities. Its first chapter ability is for us to mill 5 cards. Its second is to return all land cards from our graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So we have a little bit of a sub-theme of self-mill in this deck, and being able to get all of our lands back, just a splendid reclamation, is pretty great. And then, last chapter is until end of turn, another target creature we control gains trample and gets +X/+X, where X is the number of lands we control. So this is just a nice overrun effect on one of our creatures. Seems pretty good. Next, from Modern Horizons 3, we have Disciple of Freyalise. 3 and triple green gives us a 3/3 Elf Druid, so that's very small for 6 mana. But it says when it enters, we can sacrifice another creature, and if we do, we gain life and draw cards, both in amounts equal to the sacrificed creature's power. So, a very specific use for this card, gaining the life and drawing the cards, but if we've got one of our really big things in play, and we also have several other big things, sometimes we might just want to refill our hand, and that's pretty good. However, Disciple of Freyalise is also an modal double-faced card. So on the backside, Garden of Freyalise, we can play this card as a land. If we want to pay 3 life when it enters, it'll come in untapped and tap for green. Otherwise, it comes in tapped and taps for green. So this is a great way for us to put a land into play if we don't have other lands in our hand. Maybe our opening hand has, 2 forests and the Disciple, which means turn 1, if we don't have anything else going on, we could just play the backside of the Disciple tapped, and it's like we didn't lose out on any of our tempo. So I love these MDFCs, and the Disciple has a good effect for us as well because we have such big creatures in this deck. Next is Kodama of the East Tree. This is from, what is this, Commander Legends? Yeah. So Kodama of the East Tree is a 6/6 legendary spirit for 4 and double green. It has reach, and it says whenever another permanent we control enters, just permanent, If it wasn't put onto the battlefield with this ability, you may put a permanent card with equal or lesser mana value from your hand onto the battlefield. And it has partner, which we don't care about. So this means if we were to play, I don't know, Disciple of Freylis, while Kodama the East Tree is in play, we can then have the trigger for the Kodama happen and play out Railway Brawler, or Scion of Calamity, or anything that costs less than Disciple of Freylis. It does say permanent as well, so if we have a land, we can put a land out. If we play our land for turn and Kodama the East Tree triggers, lands have a mana value of 0, so we can put another land into play with this. Just very powerful. Kogla the Titan Ape. I love Kogla in these green decks. 3 and triple green for a 7/6 legendary ape that says when it enters, it fights one creature we don't control. When it attacks, it naturalizes an artifact or enchantment that a defending player controls. So we're just blowing things up left and right here. But Kogla also has the ability for 1 and a green, we can return a human we control to its owner's hand and give Kogla indestructible until end of turn. Now Vorinclex, our commander, is not a human, but we are running 6 humans in this deck. So if we can find one of those, and it happens to be in play when we play Kogla, we can have Kogla enter, have Kogla's fight trigger go on the stack, immediately pay for this ability and bounce that human and give Kogla indestructible, then let the fight trigger resolve and Kogla indestructibly fights something. Then we just replay our human. Very nice, big ape. I mentioned we have a Landfall theme, so here's Rampaging Baloths. Love these guys, and I'm glad that they got to reprint them in Foundations. 4 and double green for a 6/6 beast with trample, and Landfall, make a 4/4 green beast. So that 4/4 beast does not have trample, but every time we get a land out, we're getting another beast, so these things have good attack ability, good defense ability, we're fine either way. Regal Behemoth is a 5/5 dinosaur. We love our dinosaurs in this deck. For 4 and double green. It has trample, and it says when it enters, we become the monarch. What does the monarch do? The monarch is just 2 rules. It means whoever is the monarch, when they go to their end step, they draw a card. And if someone attacks and does combat damage to the monarch, that attacking person who did the combat damage becomes the monarch. So the monarch mechanic passes around the table anytime someone attacks the monarch, which encourages players to attack, which is something we want to do anyway. And we are rewarded for being the monarch, not just because we get to draw a card at our end step when we become the monarch, but also whenever we tap a land for mana while we're the monarch, we add an additional 1 mana of any color. So this doubles our mana production from our lands. The behemoth is great. And if someone takes the monarchy from us, loved it. We're going to come after them and we're going to get it back. Next is Soul of the Harvest. 4 and double green for a 6/6 elemental with trample that says whenever another non-token creature we control enters, we may draw a card. So a good repeatable card advantage engine in Soul of the Harvest. We could have been running Beast Whisperer, but I think Soul of the Harvest is a lot better for us because we want to see our big friends come out. Surak and Goreclaw is next. 4 and double green for a 6/5 legendary human bear. A human and a bear. Don't worry, I know you've seen me put Surak and Goreclaw in some of my other green-based March of the Machine commander decks. They're going to get their own deck eventually. In the meantime, they are a 6/5 trampler that gives all of our other creatures trample, pretty good, and whenever another non-token creature we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on it and it gets haste until end of turn. So we can just surprise our opponents with a creature that can suddenly attack and is a little bigger than what's printed on it. Surak and Goreclaw, it really helps. Plus it has trample, everything does. Avenger of Zendikar. We couldn't have a deck with any kind of landfall in it without Avenger of Zendikar. 5 and double green for a 5/5 elemental that says when it enters, we make a 0/1 plant creature token for each land we control. And we have landfall whenever a land we control enters, we can put a 1/1 counter on each plant we control. Now remember, the Avenger is an elemental, so it doesn't get counters on itself. But all of its little friends, little buddies that it comes in with, are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as we play more and more lands. Do we have any other plants in the deck? We do. Just one. You'll see it when it comes up. Canopy Gargantuan is next. 5 and double green for a 7/7 dragon with flying and ward 2 that says at the beginning of your upkeep, put a number of 1/1 counters on each other creature you control equal to that creature's toughness. So as long as the Gargantuan sticks around until our upkeep, all of our creatures' toughnesses are going to get doubled in the same way that Railway Brawler comes in and doubles all of our creatures' powers. That's gross. Next is Giant Adiphage. 5 and double green for a 7/7 trampling insect that says when it deals combat damage to a player, we make a token copy of it. So, big bug, make more bug. Sorry to bug you. For the memes, we are running Jumbo Cactuar. I am not a Final Fantasy guy, so I don't know what the lore is behind this cactus with a mustache, but this is a 1/7 plant. It's a plant, so it can get bigger from the Canopy Gargantuan for 5 and double green. And it has an ability called 10,000 Needles. Whenever it attacks, it becomes a 10,007, which is quite large. Now, that's probably going to kill anything that blocks it, so it's probably going to get chump blocked, right? That seems reasonable. But what if we have a Surek and Goreclaw in play? Now it's a 10,007 with trample. And if it came in after Surek and Goreclaw, it's a 10,001 8 with trample and haste. This could just end someone's game right then. That seems pretty fun. We have a few sources of trample in this deck, or other forms of evasion, so Jumbo Cactuar can really do a lot of damage. But just imagine attacking with this, and then we attack with it on the turn that the third chapter of the Grand Evolution has triggered. So we attack with the Cactuar, it gets its plus 9,999 plus O, and then we can spend mana to just make it fight things. I mean, it might die in the process because its toughness is still just a 7, but we're probably going to kill essentially anything we want to at that point. So yeah, the Cactuar is here for memes, but it's also going to kill people, and that's the fun of having something so big in green. Next is Titan of Industry, which I used to run in Standard. Love this card. 4 and triple green for a 7/7 elemental with reach and trample, and when it enters, we get to choose 2 of these 4 things, so it's a command on a creature. We can either naturalize, we can gain 5 life, we can make a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token, or we can put a shield counter on a creature we control. Shield counters are special. They are a defined type of counter. That means whenever that creature would take damage or be destroyed, one of those 2 events happens. Instead, that event doesn't happen, you just remove the shield counter. So it's sort of like a stun counter. Stun counters are removed instead of that creature untapping when it would untap. Shield counters protect against any amount of damage, but only one instance of it, or a destroy effect. So if you try to cast murder on a creature with shield counter, it just removes the counter. If you cast shock on this Titan of Industry, when it's got a shield counter on it, the shield counter will be removed and it won't take any damage. But then if you cast murder afterwards, it just dies. So yeah. Next we have Tyrannex Rex. 4 and triple green for an 8/8 Phyrexian dinosaur. So this dinosaur is actually a Phyrexian, like Vorinclex. It can't be countered. It has trample, ward 4, and haste, so it can attack right away, and it has toxic 4. Toxic 4 means that when it deals damage to a player, that player will also gain 4 poison counters. This is not a triggered ability, so this is just going to happen as part of the combat damage that that player takes, which is kind of annoying. We don't really have a lot of sources of poison counters in this deck, but it's nice to see just a big 8/8 that can't be countered, that is hasty, that has a lot of protection, and it can trample. Just slam this down. Maybe we use the third chapter of the Grand Evolution to have it fight things, but in any case, it's probably going to put 4 poison counters on someone. But if we don't have any other sources of poison, then what do we care? Well, the reason we care is because players in Commander hate poison counters. They see the Tyrannex Rex, and they think we're running more than just that, poison counters, especially because our commander is a Phyrexian, which means the Tyrannex Rex is going to take their hate. It's removal bait. They're going to have to use spells or big creatures to try and destroy or block and kill the Tyrannex, and when they're doing that, they're paying an extra 4 mana because of ward with the spells. So they're using their turn up and their resources up to kill this big thing that we don't care that much about because we have plenty of other big creatures. And it's not our commander that's being hit. Tyrannex Rex, pretty good, magnet for removal. But who knows? Maybe it'll even be able to attack and kill a player with poison. That's also pretty fun. Next, one of our finishers is the Angry Bacon. 5 and triple green for a 7/7 boar. This is the Endray's Forerunners. Vigilance, Trample, Haste, and when it enters, all of our other creatures get +2/+2 and Vigilance and Trample. So everything gets to attack vigilantly and with Trample, and hopefully that just runs over one of our opponents, or maybe more than one of our opponents, and we're done. You can be a big pig too. Next up is Stone Hoof Chieftain. 7 and a green gives us an 8/8 Centaur Warrior with Trample and Indestructible, and whenever another creature we control attacks, it gains Trample and Indestructible until end of turn. So this is interesting because it triggers whenever any of our creatures attacks. So if we attack with 7 creatures, we're going to get 7 triggers on the stack. Our opponents can respond to those triggers, but that's not really that much of a downside. It's just, something worth recognizing for purposes of timing. But yeah, the Chieftain protects itself and protects all of our other friends and gives them all Trample. Imagine having this in play when we attack with a Cactuar. Just gross. Next is Terastodon, a classic. 6 and double green gives us a 9/9 elephant that when it enters, we get to generous gift things 3 times. We can destroy up to 3 target non-creature permanents, and for each permanent put into a graveyard this way, its controller makes a 3/3 green elephant creature token. So we're sending 9 power and toughness of elephants around the table. We can hit our own things if we want. As long as they're not creatures, we can just kill some permanents. But probably what we're going to do is just award some elephants to our friends because we've gotten rid of their terrifying artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, even lands if we really need to. So yeah. Next is Apex Altasaur. Apex Altasaur is 7 and double green for a 10/10 dinosaur, and when it enters, it fights up to 1 target creature we don't control. This thing can fight even without Vorinclex's help. It also has Enrage, which says whenever it is dealt damage, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. So this can come in, and it doesn't have to fight something because it's up to 1. It could be 0. And when it's dealt damage, probably from fighting, it doesn't have to fight something because it's up to 1, but it can. So the idea is with Apex Altasaur, you have it kill as many things as you can without it dying in the process, and then wait for it to take damage again on a later turn once it's had all the damage removed from it from that first turn, and you start the process again. This is just repeatable removal in the form of endless fights by this Altasaur. But we have a different Apex as well. This is Apex Devastator. For 8 and double green, we get a 10/10 Chimera Hydra with a very simple amount of rules text. Cascade, 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 Cascade. So when we cast this, before it even resolves, we cascade 4 times in sequence. What Cascade is you flip cards off the top of your library until you get to a spell that costs less than 10. You can then cast it for free. And all of those cards that you flipped over to get to that spell, you put on the bottom of your library in a random order. Then you do the next instance of Cascade again. So with Apex Devastator, yes, you are just getting a 10/10, essentially vanilla creature after it's done resolving, but you're also getting to cast 4 other spells. Hopefully, big creatures. So yeah, the Devastator is very nice. Next, for another very big one, it's Decimator of the Provinces. Decimator of the Provinces is a 7/7 Eldrazi Boar for 10 generic mana. It says when we cast it, creatures we control get +2/+2 and trample until end of turn, so it's a little bit Endrazers itself, and it also itself has trample and haste. It's even a trample haste 7/7. The only difference between this and the Angry Bacon is that it doesn't give or have vigilance. However, it does have Emerge. So for 6 and triple green, so a total of 1 less than its casting cost, we can cast it for its Emerge cost. And Emerge works like this. We cast it and we sacrifice a creature as an additional cost, and whatever that creature's mana value was reduces the Emerge cost. So it's just the mana value. and we're reducing this cost right here. So we could be playing this for just a small amount of mana, getting it out, getting its cast trigger, having it hit. It has haste, so we just go to combat right away. We're not down a creature because we lost one, but we got the Decimator, and we're probably attacking for lethal. If not, we're attacking to ruin someone's day. And so yeah, we gotta have these big pigs take us where we need to go. Finally, one more dinosaur. It's Ghalta, Primal Hunger. Really cheap. Used to be not so cheap. Thanks, Foundations. Ghalta is a 12/12 legendary elder dinosaur for 10 and double green, but it costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures we control. Oftentimes, Ghalta is going to come out as a 12/12 for just double green, because the X is only reducing this 10 generic mana here. And, of course, Ghalta has Trample. So 12/12 Trample might come out with haste somehow. We've got a lot going on with Ghalta. And if not, we just play Ghalta, and we've got a 12/12 blocker that's going to attack next turn. Or we hit that third chapter ability of our commander's backside, and we get to pay 1 mana and attack, and rather fight with our 12/12, and keep doing that until we either have killed our 12/12 or we're done doing it, and we can do it again next time. So that covers our big ones section. We're going to talk about our Creaturefall theme now. These are creatures or other permanents that care about our creatures hitting the battlefield. There are a couple of creatures in here that care more about us casting other creatures, but it's close enough to Creaturefall that I wanted to put them in the same category, just to make it clear. So Galagreeters is 1 and a green for a 1/1 Elf Druid with Alliance. Whenever another creature we control enters, which is to say, whenever Creaturefall, we choose one of these that hasn't been chosen this turn. So we either put a 1/1 counter on the Greeters, we make a tapped treasure token, or we gain 2 life. So if we can get 3 creatures out in the same turn, we're going to get to do each one of these. Usually making the treasures is great because it lets us have a little bit of temporary, but still outside of our lands, ramp that we can use for our big creatures. But of course, making the Greeters bigger isn't a bad thing at all. Neither is getting a little bit of life every so often. Gyre Sage is next. 1 and a green for a 1/2 Elf Druid that taps for a green mana for each 1/1 counter on it. It doesn't come in with any counters, but it does have Evolve. Evolve means whenever any of our other creatures enters, if that creature has greater power or toughness than Gyre Sage, we get to put a counter on the Sage. So eventually, Gyre Sage is going to do more for us than just being a 1/2. It's going to be able to tap for quite a bit of mana. We also have other ways to put counters on our creatures, and Gyre Sage cares about those counters for this mana ability, just like it does the counters it would get from its Evolve ability. Sharp-Eyed Rookie is next. 1 and a green for a 2/2 Human Detective with Vigilance. So this is a human. We could bounce to our hand using Kogla if we want to. But a 2/2 Vigilance for 2 is pretty alright on its own. But it also says whenever a creature we control enters, if its power is greater than this creature's power or its toughness is greater than this creature's toughness, which is to say, if it, same trigger as Evolve, then we put a 1/1 counter on this creature and investigate. This could be written, even though Evolve wasn't in the Murders at Karlov Manor set, this could be written, I suppose, as Evolve, when Sharp-Eyed Rookie evolves, investigate. That would be 2 triggers, but yeah, it works out to be about the same thing. Champion of Lamholt, I put in a lot of these decks that have a lot of creatures because it just wins games. 1 and double green for a 1/1 Human Warrior that says creatures with power less than this creature's power can't block creatures you control. It doesn't say can't block creatures with power less than this creature's power. It means if Champion of Lamholt is a 5 power creature, none of our opponent's creatures with power less than 5 can block any of our creatures, no matter how big our creatures are. And whenever another creature we control enters, so Creaturefall, we put a 1/1 counter on the champion. So every time one of our creatures comes in, the Champion of Lamholt's getting bigger, and fewer of our opponent's creatures can block any of our creatures. Eventually, this becomes our board is unblockable. Deal with the champion, or we attack and win. Garruk's Uprising is next. This is an enchantment for 2 and a green. It has 3 abilities. It gives all of our creatures trample, that's pretty good. When it enters, if we control a creature with power 4 or greater, so if we have Ferocious, then we draw a card. And whenever a creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we also draw a card. So this cares about not all of our creatures coming in, just the ones with power 4 or greater, but it draws us a card for each one, letting us replace it in our hand. And if we already have at least one out, it'll draw a card and replace itself when it hits. Plus, all of our stuff has trample. Pretty good. Outcaster Trailblazer. I played this one in a different standard. 2 and a green for a 4/2 human druid that says when it enters, we can add 1 mana of any color. We just get to have a free mana, a little rebate. And when another creature we control with power 4 or greater enters, we draw a card. So it's got the same text as Garruk's Uprising. Garruk's Uprising's third ability, because it's, it triggers on a different permanent entering. However, the Trailblazer also has plot for 2 and a green. So again, if we pay this 2 and a green at sorcery speed, we can exile the Trailblazer face up, and on a later turn at sorcery speed, we can cast it for free, which means it comes in and adds 1 mana of any color, so it kind of ramps us for that turn, and then we're ready to use that mana to cast a big creature and maybe put a card in our hand. Warden of the Grove is next from Tarkir Dragonstorm. 2 and a green for a 2/2 Hydra that says at the beginning of our end step, we put a 1/1 counter on the Hydra. And whenever another non-token creature we control enters, it will endure X, where X is the number of counters on the Warden. Endure means we either make a white spirit creature token with a power and toughness equal to the number of counters on the Warden, or the creature that came in and triggered this ability gets that many counters. So if we cast Warden of the Grove, go to our end step, it gets a counter. Next turn, we have a non-token creature enter. That creature will endure X, either gaining a counter or will make a 1/1 spirit creature token. If the Warden had 8 counters on it and is a 10/10, we get another non-token creature to enter, and it will either also get 8 counters on it, or we'll make an 8/8 spirit creature token. And that'll happen every time we have a creature that isn't a token enter while the Warden's in play. Pretty good. We are running Beast Whisperer, just in case we want to have things trigger on when we cast creature spells. So whenever we cast a creature spell, this 2/3 for 2 and a double green, that is an elf druid, will draw us a card. Extra card draw based on casting spells. I know it's not Creaturefall, but it's close. We've seen Soul of the Harvest, of course. It is the same kind of trigger as Beast Whisperer, but it's just whenever our non-token creatures enter, we get to draw a card rather than when we cast them. Still 2 different sources of card advantage. We've seen Surek and Goreclaw, how it cares about our non-token creatures entering because it rewards them with a 1/1 counter and haste. Silverback Elder, again, not really Creaturefall, it cares about us casting the spells, but we get all those benefits or those options when we cast a spell. Finally, we have Halana Kessig Ranger. 3 and green for a 3/4 legendary human archer ranger. Halana has reach and says whenever another creature we control enters, so this is not non-token, we can pay 2 generic mana, and if we do, that creature will deal damage equal to its power to target creature. This is not a fight, this is a bite. So we can essentially get a free 2 generic, or a free Rabid Bite, a bonus Rabid Bite, let's say. It's not free, but it's mana fixed for us. Not that that would really matter in our mono green deck, but it's nice. We can essentially, it's not the same sequence, but it's like we have, all of our creatures have kicker, bite something, Rabid Bite something when it comes in. It seems pretty good. And of course, Halana does have the partner ability, but her partner, Elena, is not in this deck because Elena is red. That covers our Creaturefall section. Let's look at the few cards we have that have Landfall. We've seen a couple of these already. Of course, Elfsworn Giant will make us some 1/1 Elf Warrior creature tokens. Rampaging Baloths will make 4/4 green beast tokens. And Avenger of Zendikar makes a bunch of 0/1 plants when it enters, but Landfall lets us put 1/1 counters on each of those plants. So that's pretty nice. We also run, I'm going to talk about Tireless Provisioner first. 2 and a green for a 3/2 Elf Scout with Landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we either make a food token or a treasure token. Most of the time, I make treasure tokens because I want to be able to ramp into these bigger and bigger things. But this is another instance of us having food tokens in our deck. We have a couple of ways to make food, which is nice just to have those artifact tokens, but also we've got a lot of mana and we're usually throwing it at our hand to put so many big creatures into play or use the abilities of our creatures. But sometimes we've got a little extra, and it can't hurt to just chomp on some snacks and gain a little life. Finally, in the Landfall section is Springheart Nantuko. This is the card that helped me win the Modern Horizons 3 pre-release at my LGS. For 1 and a green, we get a 1/1 enchantment creature insect monk with bestow for 1 and a green. So we can either play this as a 1/1 creature, or we can bestow it, which means playing it as an aura on one of our creatures. It gives the enchanted creature +1/+1. And it has this landfall ability. I'm going to translate what this says. It says, when a land you control enters, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. But if the Nantuko is attached to a creature, if it is enchanting a different creature, we may instead pay 1 and a green and make a token copy of that creature rather than make the insect. So this will function when the Spring Card Nantuko is an aura, and this will function when the Spring Card Nantuko is an aura or is a creature. We can't make copies of the Nantuko when it's not enchanting anything. But it does mean it's sort of like I mentioned for Halana. We've got a little bit of a kicker ability, sort of, on top of this landfall, and that doesn't really work, never mind. But having this enchanting, let's say our Rampaging Bayloths, we play a land, we get the Rampaging Bayloths trigger, and make ourselves a 4/4 beast, and then we can pay 1 and a green and make a second Rampaging Bayloths, which itself will not trigger off the same landfall, but it's sitting there waiting for us to make another play, and we have 2 Bayloths that will both trigger on landfall, as will the Nantuko. So that covers our game plan. We have a bunch of other cards that will supplement that game plan, but first let's talk about these categories of support. Starting with our card advantage section. As usual, I use the word draw to tag these just because it's fast and short, not because necessarily all of these cards will draw us cards. It's just shorthand for card advantage. We're going to start with Bushwhack. I love Bushwhack. It's a single green for a sorcery that lets us either Lay of the Land, search our library for a basic, put it in our hand, and shuffle. We, of course, reveal it. Or we can have one of our creatures fight a creature that we don't control. We either find a bush or we whack something. So this is great because it draws us a land, essentially. Not a draw, actually, but it, we pay 1 green to turn the Bushwhack in our hand into a basic land, a basic forest. Or we can have one of our really big creatures fight something. This is good anytime we need it. Sharp-Eyed Rookie, we've already seen. It will make clue tokens every time it quote-unquote evolves. And those clues we can, of course, crack for card advantage. Garruk's Uprising draws us a card when it comes in, as long as we have a ferocious creature. And it also draws us a card every time a ferocious creature of ours enters. Next we have Growing Rights of Itlimoc. I love that this card is so cheap now that they reprinted it in Lost Caverns of Ixalan. For 2 and a green, we get a legendary enchantment that when it enters, we look at the top 4 cards of our library, and we may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into our hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So this, assuming we have a creature card in the top 5 of our library, or top 4 rather, kind of draws us a creature. We have to reveal it, but we do get some selection if we have multiple creatures there. Pretty nice. However, at the beginning of our end step, if we control 4 or more creatures, we transform the Growing Rights into Itlimoc Cradle of the Sun, which is a Gaia's Cradle. It either taps for green, or we can tap it for an amount of green equal to all of our creatures. So this is excellent ramp once we can flip it, and it's not hard to flip in this deck. And even before that, it's going to make sure that as much as it's able to, we have a creature that we can play to get it to that point. Plus, look at all these little guys. Next, we've seen Outcaster Trailblazer. It draws us a card every time we have a ferocious creature enter while it's in play. Next, we have Selvala, Heart of the Wilds. Selvala is just very nice. A 2/3 legendary elf scout for 1 and double green. Selvala says whenever another creature enters, its controller may draw a card if its power is greater than each other creature's power. That's not just us. That means anytime anyone at the table plays a creature, if its power is greater than all of the other creatures on the table, if it's got the highest power on the table, then its controller draws a card. This may mean some of our opponents will sometimes draw cards, and that's okay, because we're likely, with our big creatures, to be able to get more cards than they will over the course of the game. And even if not, we can pay a green into Selvala and tap her, and add an amount of mana in any combination of colors equal to the greatest power among creatures we control. So worst case scenario, we're down 1 mana, but we're up probably a lot more. So I guess that's not really a worst case scenario, but you understand. Selvala is great for us for ramp, and also is probably going to draw us a few cards. Beast Whisperer, we've seen, draws us cards whenever we cast creature spells. Toski is 3 and a green for just a 1/1 legendary squirrel from Kaldheim originally. Toski can't be countered. Toski is an indestructible squirrel. Toski must attack every combat if he's able. And whenever any of our creatures deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card. So this is Coastal Piracy on an indestructible squirrel. Pretty good. Love Toski. Really important in the Kaldheim story. I just really like Kaldheim. The Kaldheim fiction, this squirrel is important. Hey, it's Elder Gargaroth. We've seen the Gargaroth. We have the ability to draw a card whenever it attacks or blocks. Next, we have Vivian Reed. What a great planeswalker. 3 and double green for a 5 loyalty legendary Vivian planeswalker with 3 abilities. We can +1 her to look at the top 4, reveal a creature or land from among them, and put it in our hand, and put the rest on the bottom in a random order. So she draws us creatures and lands. We can -3 her to destroy an artifact, enchantment, or a creature with flying. And if we can get her all the way up there, we probably win the game, because her -8 is we get an emblem that gives all of our creatures +2/+2, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. Everyone's protected, everyone's trampling, everyone's big, and no one has to tap for it, so they can defend too if, our other components don't just scoop. Disciple of Freyalise, of course, can enter, and we can sacrifice another creature to gain life and draw cards equal to that creature's power. Regal Behemoth makes us the Monarch when it comes in, so we go to our end step and we draw a card, and we'll continue to draw cards every end step while we are the Monarch. Soul of the Harvest, whenever our non-token creatures enter, we get to draw, and Apex Devastator doesn't draw us cards, but it does give us card advantage in the form of getting to cast 4 free spells before it even resolves. So, that covers our card advantage section. Let's take a look at our acceleration section, which again I've just shorthanded with the word ramp. We're starting with Emerald Medallion. Emerald Medallion is a 2 generic mana artifact that says green spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. This is amazing. We have all of our spells are green, with the exception of a couple of spells like Emerald Medallion that are generic mana. This discounts everything so much. Now, it doesn't discount the green pips, but the amount of benefit this gives us over the course of the game, hard to quantify. Gallic Readers, of course, whenever we have a creature enter, we can make a tapped treasure token. Gyre Sage, whenever we have a creature enter and trigger its evolve ability, we'll put a counter on it, and of course we can tap it for a green mana for each counter on it. We have Nature's Lore in here, which lets us find a forest if we want. And I think that that's pretty okay. But honestly, I don't know that we really need it. I'm going to tell you what, this is not something I normally do. I'm going to add Soul Ring to this deck and just cut Nature's Lore right here live. Nature's Lore is very nice. Oh, we removed the Wayward Swordtooth. Sometimes Moxfield does things in kind of a strange way. We'll do that. There we go. So yeah, I think that Nature's Lore is very nice. It gets us a forest, and it brings it in untapped. But yeah, I think I would rather have Soul Ring, just in case. If you don't know Soul Ring, it costs 1, taps for 2. It's an artifact. It's the symbol of the format. It's incredible. I didn't put it in here because I thought it would be, a little, middle of the road. But maybe that's what Vorinclex wants. In any case, we have Nature's Lore is a great choice, and I'll put it into the considering section once the video's over, in case you have an interest in putting in here yourself. Maybe it's better to put in than Cultivate. I don't think it is, but we'll talk about Cultivate right now. Cultivate is 2 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search our library for 2 basic lands. In this case, that'll be 2 forests. We reveal them, put 1 on the battlefield tapped and the other in our hand, and then we shuffle. So this doesn't give us immediate access to mana the way that Nature's Lore does, because Nature's Lore is rampant growth, but it comes in untapped as long as it's a forest. But Cultivate does only cost 1 more mana and gets us a second land. So we can also make our land drop with this if we need to. Yeah, I think Cultivate's probably better in this deck. But if you want Nature's Lore, it's not terrible. It's just not nearly as good as Soul Ring. So let's talk about Sakura Tribe Elder. This is Steve. 1 and a green for a 1/1 Snake Shaman. That's all he is, except for his sacrifice ability. We can sacrifice him and rampant growth. Search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. So Steve is great because he can just chump block, and then we sacrifice him when we're blocking with him, or during our opponent to the right's end step, just get our land into play and immediately go to our untap step, and we've got it ready for us. Plus, he triggers all of our Creaturefall, and when we cast a creature spell, triggers. We've seen Growing Rites and how it will flip over into Itlimoc Cradle of the Sun. That's pretty good ramp. We haven't seen Gwenna yet. Gwenna, Eyes of Gaia, is 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary Elf Druid Scout. Gwenna taps for 2 mana in any combination of colors. In this deck it will be 2 green, but we can only spend that mana to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creature sources. This is relevant. So Gwenna is one of 49 cards in our deck. We're going to have a lot of creatures come into play, and Gwenna's going to be able to give us 2 mana for each of them, as well as this lets us activate our abilities. That's not just when we have our 3rd chapter of the Grand Evolution resolve and all of our creatures get the ability to fight something else for just a single generic mana for the turn. This is also our commander's ability to flip. I mean, it's expensive, 6 and double green to flip our commander. That's a lot of mana. Gwenna provides a quarter of that on her own, so pretty good. In addition, whenever we cast a creature spell with power 5 or greater, we will put a 1/1 counter on Gwenna and we untap it. I did not put this in the Creaturefall section because, again, it's not exactly Creaturefall, and it doesn't really imitate our Creaturefall abilities the way that some of the other ones like Beast Whisperer do. But yeah, I guess you could put her there if you really wanted to. In any case, we can make her a little bit bigger, and maybe if we spent her mana to cast something with power 5 or greater, we can untap her, and we get to cast her, or get to make more mana with her and cast more things that same turn. Next is Loot, Exuberant Explorer from Foundations. 2 and a green for a 1/4 legendary Beast Noble that lets us play an additional land on each of our turns. That's terrific. Gives us the ability to have more and more and more lands that we're getting into our hand get onto the battlefield. So the same reason that Wayward Swordtooth is great for acceleration, we've got Loot do the same thing. But Loot also says, for 4 and double green, we can look at the top 6 cards of our library, reveal a creature with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands we control, and put it onto the battlefield, directly on the battlefield. That's crazy. We put the rest on the bottom in a random order. Assuming we hit a creature that we would be able to cast, because we have enough of our lands to be able to do so, we get to get that onto the battlefield for free. And I'm not 100% sure why this isn't... Oh, that's why. Because it's not actually a draw spell. It's not giving us a card advantage. It's letting us cheat something into play, which is a category that we're going to get to in a minute. Consider that a preview. Also, what do you think of Loot as a character in the story, if you're the kind of person who is a Vorthos and cares about that? Let me know in the comments below. See, I turned a mistake into a call to action. Good job, me. Selvala is next. Selvala, of course, lets us ramp in the form of paying a green into her and tapping her to make a bunch of mana based on us having big creatures in play. Tireless Provisioner, whenever we have Landfall, will make us treasure tokens. Next is Big Stomps. And another plant, so we can get more counters on it, thanks to Avenger of Zendikar. So Topiary Stomper, Big Stomps, colloquially, is 1 and double green for a 4/4 plant dinosaur with Vigilance that can't attack or block unless we control 7 or more lands. So that's a little bit of a downside. But it is ferocious. It has a power of 4, which means it's going to trigger Garruk's Uprising. It's going to trigger all of our other spells that or permanents that care about creatures coming in. And when it enters, we can Rampant Growth. Search our library for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So it automatically gets us closer to it being able to attack and block. And at least on next turn, we're going to be able to use that mana for other good things too. Plus, look at this cute dino. Got a lot of dinosaurs in this deck. Speaking of which, we got Wayward Swordtooth. We've already seen it. It, like Loot, lets us play an additional land on each of our turns. Pretty good. Goreclaw is next. Terror of Calxisma. Goreclaw is 3 and a green for a 4/3 legendary bear that makes all of our creatures with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast. It's 2 generic mana, so it doesn't reduce the green pips, which means with Goreclaw in play, Big Stomps still costs double green because Goreclaw would reduce it by 2 mana, but only 2 generic, and Topiary Stomper only costs 1 generic mana. In addition, Goreclaw says whenever Goreclaw attacks, each creature we control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. So a little bit of pump, a little bit of evasion. It requires Goreclaw to attack, but she needs to be attacking. We love her. Mama Bear. Next, we have a battle. This is Invasion of Zendikar. It's one of my favorite battles, in fact. For 3 and a green, we get a siege that says when it enters, we search our library for up to 2 basic lands, put them on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So it's an explosive vegetation. We get to rampant growth twice, essentially. If you haven't seen sieges before, this is how they work. When we cast this, and then it enters, we get to choose an opponent who will protect it. It doesn't have to go on their playmat, even though that's how Arena renders it. We can keep it on our playmat. We and our other opponents can attack it, just not the person we chose to protect it. That person can block when we attack it, just the same way we were attacking if we were attacking them or a planeswalker they control. Works the same way as planeswalkers in that sense. And when it is defeated, we will exile it, and we can cast it transformed. And it does not have a casting cost, so you cast it for free. When we do, we are casting this elemental. It's an Awakened Skyclave. It's a 4/4 with Vigilance and Haste. As long as it's a creature on the battlefield, it's also a land in addition to its other types, and we can tap it for 1 mana of any color. So this will trigger Creaturefall, this will trigger Landfall, and if we are able to somehow flip it before combat on our turn, we can still attack. We can even attack with it because it has haste. But if we didn't want to attack with it, even if we get this flipped during combat and then we go to our second main, the fact that it has haste and is a creature means it can still tap to add mana right away. So Awakened Skyclave and Invasion of Zendikar, very nice inclusion in this deck. Next we have Skyshroud Claim. This is explosive vegetation, or rather it's Nature's Lore twice. 3 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search for up to 2 forests, put them on the battlefield, does not say tapped, and then shuffle. This is great in a mono green deck. It is explosive vegetation, but they don't come in tapped. So like I say, in that way it is 2 Nature's Lores. Just very nice classic card that we'd like to see some more of. We've seen our Defiler of Vigor and how for our green permanent spells we can pay life rather than one of the green pips. That's good acceleration. Emissary Green, of course, lets us, whenever it attacks, make treasures, which is good acceleration. O'Hare Kozlem lets us find a, when it deals combat damage to a player, lets us look at the top several cards, the amount of cards equal to the amount of damage we dealt, and we can get a creature and or land and put them on the battlefield. So since we can find land, that gives us acceleration. And it doesn't say on the battlefield tapped, so yeah, we can use it right away. Silverback Elder does put lands on the battlefield tapped as the part of its second option of its triggered ability, but we get to look at the top 5 and just grab one, and that's every time we cast a creature spell if we want. Next, we've also seen Regal Behemoth. Whenever we are the Monarch and we tap a land for mana, we make an extra mana, so doubles our mana while we're the Monarch. And finally, we have Traverse the Outlands. 4 and a green for a sorcery that lets us search for X basic land cards where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. We put them on the battlefield tapped and then shuffle. So if we have some kind of big thing in play, maybe we've got the Behemoth, we cast Traverse the Outlands, we get to find 5 of our basics. We're running quite a few basics in this, so pretty good. Maybe we have an Apex Devastator in play already. Traverse the Outlands then is 5 mana for us to put 10 basics into play. Pretty good. So that covers our acceleration. Let's talk now about our interaction, which again I've just shorthanded as removal. So Bushwhack costs 1 green, and one of the options on it lets us fight, have one of our creatures fight another creature we don't control. We're also running Ram Through. Ram Through is one of my favorite Rabid Bite variants. 1 and a green for an instant that says target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So just Rabid Bite. But if the creature we control has trample, excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller instead. So it's sort of like we're biting that creature and trampling over with that as well. Pretty nice. We have lots of ways to give our creatures trample, and some of our creatures, like our commander, just natively have it. And at instant speed, this is pretty sweet because we're attacking with a trampling creature, and our opponent blocks. with, let's say we're attacking with our 6/6 commander with trample, and our opponent blocks with a 4/4, they think they're just going to take 2 damage, but we can ram through that creature before combat damage, after blocks are declared. It will do 6 damage to their creature, the 2 excess will be dealt to that opponent, and now, since our creature was blocked but no longer has a blocker in front of it and has trample, our commander will just do 6 more damage to our opponent. That 6 damage, since it is combat damage, will be commander damage. The 2 that quote-unquote trampled over, that excess damage from ram through, are not commander damage because they're non-combat damage. They weren't done as part of the combat damage step. But still, this is a great way for us to turn someone's block into a bunch more commander damage, or just regular damage if it's from one of our other creatures, and give us a nice way of removing something without losing out on any damage. We've seen Halana, and Halana lets our creatures come in. We can pay 2 generic mana and have them bite something. Pretty good. Scion of Calamity, of course, when it or one of its myriad tokens deals combat damage to a player, we get to naturalize something. Silverback Elder lets us naturalize something whenever we cast a creature spell. Again, I'm using naturalize as shorthand for Green's version of destroy target artifact or enchantment. Vivian Reed, her -3 is destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. Kogla enters and fights something, and when Kogla attacks, we also naturalize something from the defending player. Titan of Industry has the ability to naturalize something as well. Terastodon can destroy 3 non-creature permanents. Can't kill creatures with this, but anything else, pretty good. And then, of course, Apex Altasaur fights everything over and over and over, and that's pretty good removal as well. So that covers our interaction. We are running 1 Wrath in this deck. I love Izuri's Predation, especially in a mono green deck. 5 and triple green is an expensive Wrath, but it's a sorcery that says for each creature our opponents control, we make a 4/4 green Phyrexian Beast creature token, and each of those tokens fights a different one of those creatures. So another way to put this is, count the number of creatures your opponents control, make that many 4/4 beasts, and each beast fights one of the creatures. Everyone's creatures, other than ours, gets a 4/4 beast that fights it, which means maybe we lose a bunch of our beasts, and maybe some of them don't kill anything, but a lot of them are going to. 4/4 is not nothing, especially if we have things like an Anthem effect that are beefing up our beasts. Now, if we have an Anthem effect like Vivian's Emblem in play, we're probably going to win anyway, but Izuri's Predation is a good way to clear the battlefield, or at least reduce the chances of our opponents blocking, because now, even if they had like an 8/8 in play, well, their 8/8 has 4 damage marked on it. Maybe they don't want to block our 6/6 trampling commander at that point, even though they'll kill the commander because they know that we're going to trample over 2 damage. And we can always recast that commander. They won't be able to get their 8/8 back, probably. Unless they're a graveyard deck. Okay, let's stop going down this road. In any case, it's a fun card that leaves behind a bunch of tokens that we can use for other reasons. So that covers our support section. Let's go through our supplemental categories. We have a bunch of these, but not that many cards in them that we haven't seen already. We're going to start with this tokens category. Springheart Nantuko, of course. We have Landfall. It'll either make an insect, or we can pay 1 and a green and make a token that's a copy of the creature that this is attached to, if it is bestowed on that creature. Warden of the Grove, whenever our non-token creatures enter, we can have it endure and make a spirit creature token, if we want, rather than putting counters on something. Elder Gargaroth attacks or blocks, we can make a 3/3 beast. Elfsworn Giant has Landfall, make a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. Rampaging Baloths has Landfall, make a 4/4 green beast creature token. Avenger of Zendikar comes in, makes a bunch of little plants. Giant Adaphage, when it deals combat damage to a player, makes a copy of itself, which of course, remember, that copy also has this ability, so we can get more and more giant bugs. And finally, Titan of Industry. One of its 4 options when it enters is make a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. So we've got lots of ways to make tokens in this deck to sort of space out our board in case we needed more creatures. Obviously, Izuri's Predation also makes tokens, but that's not in this list because it's our Wrath. So we've seen the preview for this. Let's talk about our 4 cheat cards. We have some more of these in the considering section, as I do in every one of these categories, but it's worth looking at them. So Loot lets us cheat a creature into play. For 4 and double green, we look at the top 6. And if we have a creature in them and its mana value is less than or equal to the number of lands we have, we can just put it onto the battlefield. In a way, this is card advantage, but it's a specific kind of card advantage that lets us just get something out. That seems pretty good. The same is true of Ohir Kaslam. Just like it is able to cheat a land into play, it can also put a creature into play if it finds a creature, on its combat damage trigger. Kodama the East Tree, of course, whenever any of our permanents come in, we can put a permanent with equal or lesser mana value from our hand onto the battlefield with its trigger. So all of these are cheating things in without us having to spend any mana on them. Finally, we have another battle. This is Invasion of Chandalar, one of my favorite planes. Invasion of Chandalar rather, is 3 and double green for a 4 defense counter siege. When it enters, we return up to 3 target permanents from our graveyard to our hand, permanent cards that is. So this is one of our recursive cards. If we have something die, or we mill ourselves, which we're going to be doing a lot with the first chapter of the Grand Evolution, Invasion of Chandalar is able to help us turn that mill, or those dead creatures, or removed permanents otherwise, into things that we can put back into play, because now they're back in our hand. And once we defeat the Invasion of Chandalar, we get an enchantment called Leyline Surge. It just says at the beginning of our upkeep, we may put a permanent card from our hand onto the battlefield. Just for free. It can be a land, it can be a big creature, maybe we've gotten our commander back into our hand somehow, for example, with its enters trigger, and we just replay our commander that way. Leyline Surge gives us a free way to cheat something in every upkeep. Every one of our upkeeps, that is. So that gives us more creatures, the same way that our tokens section gives us more creatures. But what if we want to make our counters or our creatures bigger? We can put counters on them, or we can pump them up. For example, we've got these pump abilities. So Goreclaw, of course, when Goreclaw attacks, all of our creatures with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample. So that's a little bit of pump. Summon Titan can give one of our creatures on its 3rd chapter ability +X/+X, where the X is the number of lands we control, as well as trample. Vivian Reed, of course, has her emblem, which pumps up all of our creatures. Endray's Forerunners and Decimator of the Provinces both give all of our creatures +2/+2 and trample. The Forerunners, of course, also gives Vigilance. So we have a counter section as well. Other ways to more permanently pump up our creatures. For example, Warden of the Grove lets our non-token creatures endure X when they enter, where X is the number of counters on the Warden, so we can put counters on those creatures. Renata, Call to the Hunt, we haven't seen her yet. 2 and double green for a star 3 legendary enchantment creature demigod. Renata's power, this star, is equal to our devotion to green. Devotion means we look at all the permanents we have in play and we count up the green pips in their mana costs, and that's our devotion. So if we had all of these cards in play, our devotion would be, what's that, 12? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, or 12, yeah. Because that's the number of green pips among all these cards. So Renata would be a 12/3 if those were the only cards we had in play with green pips and their mana costs. Renata also says, each other creature we control enters with an extra +1/+1 counter on it, which means if it was going to enter with 0, it enters with 1. So everything coming in a little bit bigger is pretty good. Defiler of Vigor, of course, says whenever we cast a green permanent spell, all of our creatures get a +1/+1 counter. Emissary Green lets us put a counter on each of our creatures for every vote of security that any player votes for, including us. Railway Brawler puts counters on our creatures when they enter based on their power. Canopy Guardian puts counters on our creatures during our upkeep based on their toughness. And Surrican Goreclaw has our creatures enter with a counter on them as well. Or rather, when they enter, they get a counter on them. This is a triggered ability. This is a replacement effect. So Renata has our creatures enter with that counter. Surrican Goreclaw triggers and puts the counter on our creature once they enter. Worth recognizing, if our opponent, for example, if we were to play Warden of the Grove, and our opponent has a shock in hand, Warden of the Grove will enter with a 1/1 counter on it. So it'll enter as a 3/3 if Renata's in play. But if Surrican Goreclaw is in play, Warden of the Grove will enter and trigger Surrican Goreclaw And if that trigger resolves, it'll get a counter in haste, but our opponent could respond to the trigger by shocking the Warden and killing it. They can't do that before the counter goes on it from Renata, because Renata is not triggering. Renata is a replacement effect for the way that the Warden would enter. Just worth it recognizing. So that covers our counters. Let's talk about ways for our big creatures to get through and do damage. The best way, my favorite way of course, is a Champion of Landfall, because the champion can make all of our creatures unblockable. Garruk's Uprising can give all of our creature, or does give all of our creatures trample. Goreclaw, when she attacks, gives our creatures with power 4 or greater +1/+1 and trample. Summon Titan, its third chapter ability gives a big power toughness bonus and trample to one of our creatures. Vivian Reed can give all of our creatures vigilance, trample, +2/+2 and indestructible with her emblem. Surikhan Goreclaw, of course, gives all of our creatures trample, the same as Garruk's Uprising. Endray's Forerunners and Decimator of the Provinces both give +2/+2 and trample, as additionally vigilance for the Endray's Forerunners. And our Stonehoof Chieftain has trample and gives all of our creatures trample plus indestructible when they attack. So yeah, lots and lots of sources of trample. Plus, we've got Champion of Landfall for just straight up unblockability. That covers our evasion. That's us going around our opponent's creatures. How do we want to go through them? Well, we have some protection. So ways to keep our creatures from dying, just in general. Kogla doesn't really do much for that, but does count, because we can give Kogla indestructible by paying 1 and a green and returning one of our humans to our hand, if we have a human in play. That doesn't just protect Kogla with the indestructibility, it protects the human. So we can do that when Kogla doesn't need the indestructible, but one of our humans is being targeted by something we don't want it to be targeted by. We can just bounce it to our hand with Kogla. Also, Titan of Industry can put a shield counter on one of our creatures, and Stonehoof Chieftain, like I said, when our other creatures attack, the Chieftain will make them indestructible until end of turn. So yeah. Next is our recursion section. We've seen a little bit of that already. Evasion of Chandelar, of course, will enter and let us regrow 3 permanents. And Summon Titan lets us Splendid Wreck all of our lands. They do come in tapped with its second chapter ability. Last, we have our finishers section. Endray's Forerunners is the most classic of our finishers, of course. It comes in, gives +2/+2 vigilance and trample. Decimator of the Provinces does the same thing, except that it doesn't give vigilance. And Vivian Reed, of course, can finish things out when her emblem works for us and gives all of our things +2/+2, vigilance, trample, and indestructible. So all of these are giving +2/+2 and trample. Both these two are giving vigilance, and Vivian is also giving indestructible. So pretty nice. We could consider the Champion of Landfall a finisher, but it's really just that because we have so many big creatures in this deck, and its evasion that it grants is a pretty good way for us to finish things out. So that covers all of our spells in the deck. As usual, we're going to talk about our lands, which are pretty simple in this deck. We're running 27 basic forests. You don't have to use the fancy art, but it was relatively inexpensive, so I said, why not, for all will be one forests. We want to be able to make sure that we hit these a lot, and so we're going to be running quite a few of them. We're running 3 fixing lands, but these are really all ramp lands. So Castle Garenbrig is a land that enters tapped unless we control a forest. We've got a 27% chance, just base, to have that forest. We actually have one other forest, but you'll see it soon. Anyway, Castle Garenbrig taps for green, but we can also pay 2 and double green and tap it to add 6 green, but we can only use that for creature spells or abilities of creatures, which is terrific for us to be able to get Vorinclex out and then use the Castle Garenbrig to quickly flip Vorinclex. So yeah, this is us tapping 5 lands essentially, 4 for the 2 and a green and then Castle Garenbrig, and we're only getting 1 more green and all of that mana is restricted. But sometimes we need that, just a little bit of extra to push us over. Myriad Landscape is next. Myriad Landscape is very slow, but it is ramp. It is a land that enters tapped. It taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for 2 basic lands that share a land type, and then put them on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Technically up to 2 basic lands. But this means for 2 and tap and sack, we can find 2 forests. We can double Rampant Growth. We can Sky Shroud claim, but they're tapped. It's an explosive vegetation. So it is slow because they come in tapped, we have to pay mana and sack this to do it, and the Myriad Landscape itself comes in tapped. But we did just spend 1 land drop, and the next turn or a few turns later, we were able to turn that into 2 lands in play. So that's ramp for us. A little faster ramp, however, is Temple of the False God. I know some people don't like this. I think it's great for the kind of decks I run. This is just Soul Ring on a land. It's a soul land. Comes in untapped, taps for 2 colorless mana, but we can't activate it at all unless we control 4 other lands and it. Or more. So yes, we can't use this as a soul land early in the game, but we have so much ramp in this deck. So many ways to accelerate ourselves, especially with lands themselves. Temple of the False God is going to be online faster than you think. It's just maybe don't keep an opening hand with a single forest and the temple, because you may not be able to use it in a while. So that covers those lands. Now we have some utility lands. Let's talk about Bonder's Enclave. This comes in untapped, taps for colorless, and we can pay 3, tap, and draw a card. But only if we have Ferocious, if we have a creature with power 4 or greater. Which we will in this deck. We have so many cards that qualify for that. I'm so glad that Bonder's Enclave has dropped in price. So yeah, just a solid way for extra card draw in case we need it. I like running Demolition Field. Even though we have Terastodon in this deck and it can blow up lands, I want to always have something in our land base that can deal with a problem land, even though I'm not trying to do like land denial or especially mass land denial. Demolition Field is a great solution for that. It taps for colorless, comes in untapped, and we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic that our opponent controls. Just a non-basic. They then get to search their library for a basic and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And so do we. So neither player is down a land. Both of us are down a utility land, presumably. Of course, they might have been, we might have gotten rid of their very powerful, fixing land or something like that. But usually we're going to be getting rid of something more threatening, like a Dark Depths, or not Dark Depths, a Thespian stage that's threatening us. I guess Dark Depths, that's fine. A Glacial Chasm, maybe a Rogue's Passage if they're running something that's threatening that way. And nobody's down a land unless they just didn't have any basics left in their library, which wouldn't be us. Next is another forest. It's Gingerbread Cabin. This is a forest, so it just inherently taps for green, but it enters tapped unless we control 3 or more other forests. So the Gingerbread Cabin might come in tapped, and all it does is tap for green. But if it comes in untapped, we make a food. We could run something other than this, but I think Gingerbread Cabin is fine. We're very likely to be able to get it into play untapped, get a free food. Even if it comes in tapped, it's not that big of a deal. And an extra food can't hurt us. So yeah, love Gingerbread Cabin. Next is Mosswort Bridge. Great for our deck. Mosswort Bridge comes in tapped, but it has Hideaway 4, which means when it comes in, we look at the top 4 of our library, and we exile one of them face down under the bridge, and we put the rest on the bottom of a random order. Once it untaps, the bridge can tap for green, or we can pay a green into it and tap it to play that exiled card without paying its mana cost, as long as we have creatures with total power of 10 or greater. If we have that, which is not hard to do in this deck, we essentially get it for 2 mana, tapping a green source and the bridge. So that's maybe 2 lands that we've tapped, kind of. And we get a free card. Not really free, discounted, but you understand. Pretty good as a way to play something really big. And this does not say activate only at sorcery speed, so we can surprise our opponents with a big blocker maybe, or a really sweet enters trigger, depending on what we've exiled under it with Hideaway. Reliquary Tower, because even if for no other reason, we may not be drawing a whole lot of lands in this deck, or a whole lot of cards in this deck. We might, but even if not, our commander puts 2 forests in our hand when it enters, and when it enters from the 3rd chapter ability of the Grand Evolution resolving, and it flips back over, we get to get 2 more forests in our hand. We're going to be getting forest after forest after forest. We don't want to have to throw them away because we want to use them, so Reliquary Tower helps us out. Comes in untapped, taps for colorless, gives us no maximum hand size. We love it. Rogue's Passage is next. It comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap to make one of our creatures unblockable this turn. That can be the difference between one of our opponents leaving the game or not. I think that's pretty useful, and in any case, it's just an untapped land, even though it doesn't make green, might as well have it as a backup. The Hunter Maze definitely comes in tapped, but it can tap for green, and if we want, we can pay 1 and a green and tap and sack it to draw a card. So late in the game, when we don't need all of our lands, when we have plenty of mana floating around, and we maybe want a little bit more card advantage, Hunter's Maze can do it for us. Plus, it's the place that Vorinclex has, so it's in flavor. It's the sphere that Vorinclex sort of rules over. Finally, it's a monocolor deck, so I like to run War Room in my monocolor decks. Even though it's a little expensive for this deck, comparatively, it comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 3, tap, and pay life equal to the number of colors in our commander's color identity, which is to say, in this deck, 1 life, and we draw a card. So not quite as strong as Bonder's Enclave, but we can do it without having a creature with power 4 or greater in play. It just costs us a life every time we do it. So might as well have a little redundancy in that way. And that sums it up. Again, I'm making a deck for each of the March of the Machine legends, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or a style of deck. Thanks for watching, everyone. Make sure to like and subscribe, and remember, magic is fun. You should play more Magic.